Okay, 1.5 homework, solving quadratic equations. So I'm going to go over a couple of these, and what we're going to do is we're going to just solve, right? So solve means find the answers to x. So x equals what number? And we have to do this by factoring. So as soon as you see an expression with an x squared and an x, usually a constant term as well, what happens is you have to factor it. Okay, you can't just solve for x because there's not only one x anymore. Okay, so when we're doing 1a, we have to first see, like, are we able to factor this? Okay, so what two numbers multiply to -7 and add to -6? Okay, so when I'm thinking, the only factors of 7 are 1 and 7 because it's a prime number. But that's okay. 1 and 7 like subtract to 6. So -7. So x plus 1, x minus 7. Okay, those are the two factors. Okay, and in order to solve, we set each of these brackets equal to 0. So we get, x plus 1 equals 0, and then x minus 7 equals 0. We bring this over, x equals -1, and x equals 7. Okay, so that's a factoring technique. For b, x squared minus 3x minus 5 equals 0. When I look at this, I'm thinking, what two numbers multiply to -5, add to -3? Well, the only factors of 5 are 1 and 5. Okay, and if we add those or subtract them, they're never going to equal 3. Therefore, we can't factor this. We have to use quadratic formula. So I identify the a, which is 1, the b, which is -3, and the c, which is -5. And I plug it into the quadratic formula. Okay, so we have negative b. So whatever b is, we negate it because of this negative sign. So we have 3 plus minus, and then the square root of b squared, which is -3 squared, minus 4, a, which is 1, and then c, which is -5. And then that's all over 2a. a is 1, so that's just all over 2. Okay, all of this you should be able to put into your calculator in one shot. So we have x equals 3 plus minus, we're going to get 29 over 2. So this plus minus option gives us two answers. Okay, so this is going to branch off to x equals 3 plus root 29 divided by 2. And it's also going to branch off into x equals 3 minus root 29 divided by 2. And then if you want to round these, I know the question originally says round to the nearest hundredth. If you want to do that, you can go ahead and sub these into your calculators. If not, you can also leave it like this. This is exact, and we've already covered radicals. Okay, we're going to do c. So 3x plus 5 squared equals 64. Okay, the way it is right now, we can't actually solve. So what we have to do is we have to completely expand everything. 3x plus 5 times 3x plus 5. I'm also going to bring over that 64, and it's going to become -64. Okay, so 9x squared plus 15x plus 15x plus 25. Bring that down, -64 equals 0. Okay, remember, when we square something, we're not just squaring the two components individually, because you're going to miss out on this, like foiling on that middle number. Okay, so let's collect like terms. 9x squared plus 30x, and then we have 25 minus 64. Which is -39. Equals 0. Okay, so these numbers are not very pretty. I'm just going to double check if, oh, this one does factor nicely. Okay, so what two numbers multiply to 39? Or negative 39? No, it's not negative 39. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to common factor out of 3 first, just to get these numbers a little smaller. Okay, so we're dealing with 3x squared plus 10x minus 13. Okay, now a times c is 39. Now what two numbers multiply to negative 39 and add to 10? Okay, 39 has 1 and 39, and it has 3 and 13. So 3 and 13 subtract to 10, and it needs to be positive 10, so the negative is just going to be on the 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this trinomial, and I'm going to factor it. Okay, so I'm going to break down this middle term for decomposition into negative 3x plus 13x. So 3x squared minus 3x plus 13x minus 13 equals 0. Okay, we do factor by grouping because there are 4 terms. So we group those two together. Out of the first two, I can divide out a 3x. That's going to be our common factor. So we bring down this 3. The common factor goes here. And then what's left over goes in the bracket. Now, out of the second bracket, we can factor out a 13. And we're left with x minus 1. Okay, so now these two are our 2 terms, and we can factor out an x minus 1. Okay, so we have 3x minus 1, and then 3x plus 13, that equals 0. So we actually have to solve for the x's. So for this one, we have x equals 1. And for this one, you can formally do 3x plus 13 equals 0. Bring that over. 3x equals negative 13. And then divide out the numbers. X equals negative 13 over 3. So those are the 2 roots. Okay, another way of doing 1c, 3x plus 5 squared equals 64, is to actually root it right off the bat. So if we root the left-hand side, the square and the root go away. And if we root the right-hand side, we get plus minus 8. So now we have 3x plus 5 equals plus minus 8. I would branch that off. 3x plus 5 plus 8, no, equals 8. And then 3x plus 5 equals negative 8. Okay, bring that over. 3x equals 8 minus 5 is 3. And that's where you get your x equals 1 from. And then if you bring this over, the plus 5, it'd be negative 5. So I'd get 3x equals negative 13 over 3. X equals negative 13 over 3. Okay, so shorter form, but then you have to memorize like another approach. Whereas this approach works for all of them, completely expand, bring everything over, and then simplify. And then factor. Okay, so E. X squared minus 9 equals 7. Okay, bring over that 9. Well, you can do this one of 2 ways. You can do this factoring, or you can just bring it over and solve. So if you brought it over to solve, the reason why we don't have to actually factor this is because it doesn't have an x term in it. So if you brought this over, we'd go 7 plus 9, which we know is 16. So we can actually straight solve. So x equals plus minus 8. There's going to be 2 answers there. Okay, the other way of doing this one is actually by factoring. Again, this approach doesn't fail. X squared minus 9 equals 7. So if you brought this over, we'd have an x squared minus 16 equals 0. Oh, I'm sorry, this was 4. Root 16 is 4. Okay, so how do we factor this? Well, this is a difference of squares. X squared minus 16. So we get x plus 4, x minus 4 equals 0. We branch these two off. We get x equals negative 4, and then x equals 4. Okay, so you can straight solve or you can factor this one. Okay, f 3x squared minus 5x plus 2. Okay, so the question is, what two numbers multiply to 6 and add to negative 5? Okay, so I get 1 and 6, 2 and 3. If they have to multiply to a positive number, they both have to be positive or negative. So I get negative 2, negative 3. So we can go ahead and use decomposition for f. So we're going to break down this middle number into minus 2x, minus 3x. Okay, and then we're going to factor by grouping. So we're going to group the first two terms and the last two terms. So we can divide out an x, and then we can divide out just a negative 1. Okay, so if we divide out an x, we're left with 3x minus 2. If we divide out a negative 1, we're left with 3x minus 2. Okay, if this leading coefficient is negative, you have to pull out the negative. Okay, so when we branch these two off, we get 3x minus 2 equals 0. Bring that over, 3x equals 2, and then divide that out. This one we can just bring it over or flip the sign. So we get x equals 2 over 3 and x equals 1. Okay, for k, we're going to go x squared equals 5. So if I were to root both sides, I would have x equals plus or minus root 5. Okay, I would leave this as a root 5. We've already touched on radicals, or you can put into your calculator. Okay, it depends on what the question asks. L is a little bit harder. 1 over x equals 2x plus 1. Here's the thing. We can't deal with x in the denominator, so I'm going to multiply each of these terms by x. Okay, these cancel and give me a 1. This one I get 2x squared, right? 2x times x. And then this one I get x. Okay, bring everything to one side and equal it to 0. Now, what two numbers, if we can, multiply to negative 2 and add to 1? The only numbers that multiply to negative 2 are 1 and 2. And if we subtract 1, then it adds to 1, so this works to factor it. Okay, so I'm going to do decomposition, and I'm going to break this middle term down into negative 1x and 2x. So 2x squared minus 1x plus 2x minus 1. Okay, out of the first two terms, I'm going to divide by x, and then out of the second two terms, I'm just going to divide by 1, right? Like there's nothing else. So I get x, 2x minus 1, and then I get plus 1, 2x minus 1. Out of these two terms, I'm going to factor out a 2x minus 1. So that's going to be our first factor. And then x plus 1 is going to be our second factor. Okay, if I branch these off, I'm going to get 2x minus 1 equals 0, and then x plus 1 equals 0. Bring these over, I get 2x equals 1, and divide out that 2, and I get x equals negative 1. Okay, so I rewrote m down here. What we want to do is we first want to expand it, okay? So we're going to expand these and these. So we get 2x squared minus 6x minus x plus 3. Okay, bring down the equal sign. We're going to FOIL these. We get x squared plus 3x plus 2x plus 6. We're going to expand this negative sign into the bracket. And then just bring down the plus 7. So now all we have to do is collect like terms. So I'm going to collect these two. Okay, so negative 6 minus 1. And then this is the only x squared. I'm going to collect these three. Those cancel, so I have 3x. And 6, 7, 14. Okay, I'm going to bring all three of these over. So we have 0, actually, I'm going to do this the opposite way. So I see that there's a 2x squared here, so I'm going to actually bring them to this side, because when I subtract this x squared, I'm still going to have like a positive number, and I don't have to do those extra steps. Okay, so I get 2x squared minus x squared minus 7x minus 3x plus 3 minus 14. So I end with x squared minus 10x, what is that, minus 11. Okay, so now I have a trinomial. Everything's on one side and it equals 0. So my question is, what two numbers multiply to negative 11 and add to negative 10? Just 1 and 11. And the 11 has to be negative. X plus 1, x minus 11. So my x values are negative 1 and positive 11. Okay, so essentially expand, collect like terms, and then solve. Okay, 2 is the exact same style of question. For this one, I would divide both sides by 3, leaving us x squared equals 25. So when you root it, you get two answers. You get x equals plus 5 and minus 5. Okay, root 25 is 5, so plus 5 minus 5. Okay, and e, I'm going to bring this 5 over. So I get 2x squared minus 4x minus 5. So what two numbers multiply to negative 10 and add to negative 4? So if you think about this, 1 times 10, 2 times 5, neither of these are going to add to 4, so we have to use quadratic formula. So I get x equals, this is a, this is b, and this is c, minus b plus minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, everything under the bracket you should, or the square root sign, you should be able to put into your calculator. So 16 minus 20, 40. I get negative 24. I'm going to check if this is right. So 16 minus 4 times 2 times, oh, add them, 56. So I get 4 plus minus root 56 over 4. So I'm going to break those down. Into x equals 4 plus root 56 over 4, and x equals 4 minus root 56 over 4.